Welcome to the Hey Soul Sista podcast, where Mel Histon will guide you through life's big questions and bring you one step closer to doing this crazy journey as best you can.
Hey Soul Sisters, today we're talking about love and relationships. We all love the feeling of being in love, and we're biologically programmed to be in a relationship. We really are. But what we really want and need is for the relationship to be a positive and healthy one. As many of you know, I run a domestic violence service called Got Your Back Sista, where we see women every day come through our door or call on the phone asking for help as their partners become abusive or violent, and they need help to get out of that relationship or support to navigate the system. When I say the system, I've got inverted, doing the little commas with my hands, whatever. The system, if they've chosen to leave their abusive partner. So we may often enjoy the feeling of being in love, but what's important is that if you're in a relationship, that it's healthy and positive and good for both you and your partner. So in this episode today, that's what we're going to look at. What a healthy relationship looks like, how to recognize if you're in an unhealthy or abusive relationship, and what to do if you are in a toxic or abusive relationship. And so to help me today, I have two members of our Got Your Back Sista team, Rosie and Joey, and as part of their roles, they spend a lot of time working with women who've been in an abusive relationship and educating them about healthy relationships. So welcome, Joey and Rosie.
Hey Mel, how you doing?
Hi Mel. Hey guys.
I feel like I just totally ramped that. Hey, welcome Rosie and Joey. No, they're just looking at me. I'm like, yay. Yeah, they're just looking at me like, hey, okay, I'll stop trying to pet them up. So Rosie and Joey are two very important members of our team. They do casework and they educate women through various programs that we run about healthy relationships. And Joey actually also does some work at schools. But Rosie, you've had quite a long career working with women in this space. Just give us a bit of background.
Okay, so my career has probably spanned around about 15 years working as a professional in the field. I didn't go to university till I was in my 40s, and then through that process I realised that domestic violence was my passion, and largely so because that's my family of origin. So, I grew up as a child survivor of domestic violence, saw my mum be impacted by that, and of course, if any mother has children and she's in an abusive relationship, their children by default are also experiencing that domestic violence in all its forms. And so I have I've got the ground smarts, I guess, to work in the field and really empathise with the women and what they're going through that I work with, but also of course then later on down the track went and got the quals to back that up, and have been working in the coalface for probably the last 13 years, and then have been with you guys, thankfully, for the last 2 to 3.
We love having you part of Got Your Back Sista.
Well, I love being here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yay. Do you love being in the podcast studios?
Oh, yeah, well, next question.
First time for everything, Rosie.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, this is your first time recording.
It is, yeah, and I wasn't born with a, speaking voice, but here I am.
You're amazing.
Pushing through my comfort zone.
Oh, good. Oh, good, Rosie. And what about you, Joey?
I've been with Got Your Back Sista for about 6 years now, or be coming up to 6 years, and I really just come on board to help Mel out, but I'm very passionate about people, and I love working with our women, and so I went and studied community services so I could then become a caseworker, qualified caseworker. HR was my background, but as I said, it's working with these women and helping them move forward in their lives is something that I'm become very passionate about, and I really love it.
You also work with teenage kids in schools.
Yes. So part of being part of the Got Your Back Sista team, I went and got the qualifications for Love Bites, and that is something that I enjoy, and I realise that for us to move forward in this sector is that we need to educate our kids on what a healthy relationship looks like, because many of them have not grown up in a happy, healthy family, and they think that is the normal. So I know working with children is going to be a very important part of trying to eradicate domestic violence.
Yeah, actually educating kids about what's actually acceptable and not acceptable in a relationship, and what a healthy relationship looks like.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw that to you too, first of all. What does a healthy relationship look like?
Well, if I just want to back up, about where I came from, for me, I never grew up never knowing what a healthy relationship looked like. But I do remember I had a girlfriend at school once, and her dad worked in the fire brigade. And whenever I didn't feel safe in my home, I would go to her house and have lots of sleepovers. And what I noticed about her house was it was calm. Mum and Dad spoke to each other in a really kind, respectful way. They asked each other's opinions. They made decisions together. And whenever I was over there having dinner, we would sit down at the table as a family, and there was no phones or social media back then, so no one had mobile phones or anything. But the TV was always turned off, and they would sit at the table and actually have a conversation as a family, and that was so foreign to me. And I just remember how it made me feel. I used to always, love going over there because it was a very different experience to what I lived myself. And I felt safe. I could tell the children were really loved, and the parents spent time with them and were interested in their lives. And so for me, I've tried to, over the years, model that in my own family as time went by. And, have those lovely, respectful conversations, just have a lovely, calm household. Yeah, pretty much all of that.
I think you've nailed it, but I do think, it's about being able to communicate and listening to one another, and we don't always agree, but understanding their point of view, but also the partner understanding your point of view as well.
Yeah. And you just touched on something, Joey. You don't always agree.
No.
So it's actually okay if people disagree. Or they may argue.
Yeah.
But actually,
because we're all individuals.
Yeah.
We're all not the same. We've all got different thoughts on things, and it's about accepting that and moving forward with it.
And I guess too that's a really important part of a relationship, is being able to agree to disagree at times, because not everyone is going to be able to have their way. And so if at some point we can go, okay, well, this is not a deal breaker or an argument, and we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one, and you think that way and I think this way, and it's okay.
So on that, when does, I guess, because some people would see, they go, okay, we have to communicate, we might disagree and you might have an argument. But when does the argument become abuse? Because I'm guessing that would be something that could be confusing for people. Like in the experience of the women that you see, that you help when they come through the door, is that a big thing that they don't actually understand, like the difference between arguing and then when it actually becomes unhealthy or abusive?
It definitely does. And I think it's when it becomes personal, and it then becomes a personal attack, and it's not about the actual argument, it's about that person. And not allowing them to have that voice, and disrespecting their rights.
So in one of the groups that we run, the Shark Cage, we hand out a handout called How to Fight Fair. And so on it, it's got, absolutely do's, how to fight, what to do when you need to argue or have there's conflict. Because, let's face it, in every relationship, there actually needs to be conflict. And children need to see their parents negotiate that conflict and have that resolved in a healthy way, so that they can, do it themselves when they grow up. But, on the flip side of that, there's also how the don'ts in how to fight. And as Joey just pointed out, the minute you cross the line, so to speak, and you're no longer talking about what it is that's made me unhappy or what you're not happy about, and start attacking the person and call them names and put them down and threaten them, that's absolutely crossed the line, and that's not fighting fair, and it's not constructive, and it's not going to fix the issue, And so people lose their way in, fighting, and that's when it becomes abusive, when the other person is feeling blamed, targeted, scared.
And we do in the Shark Cage talk about the messages our body sends to us. And so if you're starting to feel uneasy about something, or we talk about walking on eggshells, that is your body actually telling you in its own way that something isn't quite right here. And if you then can't speak about it when your body is sending you that message, well, then you've got to then look at your relationship in different eyes and go, what's going on here? Why am I feeling so uncomfortable? And all I'm doing is telling my opinion about something.
Yeah. So that's interesting, listening to your body and how you feel. When you walk into the house, if you're walking on eggshells, if you're feeling nervous or anxious, being around your partner or worried about them, their reaction to things, that's a sign.
Absolutely, it's a sign. But a lot of women don't have that sign because, if you're raised in a domestic violence childhood where there's lots of abuse and conflict and all of that stuff's normalised, and you're told to shut your feelings down basically, then when you grow up and you're in those relationships, it's just so normalised, and so it doesn't feel, so you might not be feeling or thinking that you're scared, but as Joey said, there's always usually some sort of sign in your body, whether it's butterflies in the tummy, or suddenly you're changing your behaviour to, so that there is less conflict. Until you recognise those things, that's what you're actually doing. A lot of women actually don't realise it. I remember once I was speaking to a woman, we were showing her the power and control wheel, and she didn't identify she was in a domestic violence relationship. And when we showed her all the dynamics of the power and control wheel and all the ways these abusive behaviours are played out, she was still in denial. She said, but everyone's relationships like that. Everyone fights. Everyone calls each other names. Everyone puts each other down. Everyone uses threats to each other. And it wasn't until we talked about, how she feels in her body and identified that, at times she was walking on eggshells, that was her body saying, giving her a message that she is scared and she is modifying her behaviour. But up until then, even her friends and her family, whenever she would try to complain to somebody or reach out for support or say something, they would all just shut her down and go, oh, don't be stupid, everyone fights or everyone does that. And so she was thinking, oh, okay, well, this must be how it is. And yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Imagine a world where everybody thought that was okay, was constant fighting, putting down. Like, imagine the world if that's how everybody operated. It'd be total chaos.
Absolutely.
On that whole global view. Now, I want to jump back to something because you mentioned the power and control wheel. So for people who don't know what that is, tell us.
Well, it sort of breaks up the different types of abuse that, and how it happens.
Because really an unhealthy or abusive relationship, it's about imbalances in power and control.
That's right. So the power and control wheel is has the words in the centre, power and control, and on the wheel on the outside is where all the behaviours are separated. So verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, threats, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse. So what we do is we pull those things apart and ask the women, to identify what they're experiencing, if any of these things, and then we talk about how, well, do you notice, does he behave like this with other people? And usually when they go, well, no, it's just me, and we explain to them, then, well, let's see, it is actually a choice, because he's not behaving like this with other people at work, other members of his family or his friendship groups. It's only you. So he's doing that for an actual reason to keep you to behave in the ways he wants you to. And he does all of this, which makes you absolutely toe the line and do what he wants.
And if you're listening to this, you can actually look up, just Google power and control wheel to get more information about that. So if you're unsure or you want to read more about those different types of abuse, you can look that up and it might even, and if you're concerned that maybe you are in a toxic abusive relationship, that might help you identify that.
And I guess that's the difference, and we often talking about this in our Shark Cage group, helping women to identify the difference between an unhealthy toxic relationship and a domestic violence relationship. And the big key is because there are lots of people who are just in unhealthy toxic relationships with each other, and both parties will actually do all of those things that we talked about, but the difference between a domestic violence relationship is one partner is modifying their behaviour because they're scared of consequences of some reason, whether that be, abuse, whether it be physical, verbal, and also silent treatment. We speak to a lot of women who experience the silent treatment, and they sometimes they go, oh, thank God he just didn't speak to me for 3 weeks and happy days. But it's actually not. Silent treatment is a really hideous and significant form of abuse.
The silent treatment's awful. I had somebody in my life who used to give us the silent treatment, and it is actually awful.
You can't predict where they're up to. Sometimes women would say, I'd just rather he yell at me, because then I know where he's at and he'll probably just get over it. But I don't know whether he's going to not speak to me for 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. And all that time it's having that, you're second guessing yourself and, trying to, a lot of the women try to please them and appease them and to know.
Interesting you say that, because we talk about women being people pleasers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that can come from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Want to save your soul? Review us on Apple Podcast.
So many women don't realise the relationship they're in may not be healthy, or that some of their behaviours that their partners are showing is not normal. So how can women learn to differentiate between the healthy conflict resolution and patterns of abuse or manipulation in their relationship?
So I guess the first thing is to really listen to their body. We work with the women a lot around that. If something doesn't feel right in your body, then that is a sign to say something's not right here. And also we talk to the women about, especially when they're going out into relationships, new relationships, to absolutely pay attention to those signs, whether it's butterflies in the tummy, whether it's tension in the neck, whether it's a headache or stress somewhere else in their body, hot and clammy. What are those signs about, and to, once they identify that, if, for example, usually it means they've been triggered by something that's happened to them, whether it's how they've been spoken to, something that's been said to them, it could be ghosting, the absolute, no contact, then to nip that sort of stuff in the bud, ask questions and let people know that actually that's not okay with me, how you just spoke to me, what you just said to me, and, really put that out there about how you'd like to be treated.
No, I think that's a big one that Rosie just touched on is communication. Mm-hmm. And if you do, and we talk about in our programs all about our rights. We've all got the right to feel safe, to be able to voice our opinions. And a lot of people go, well, how do we create our boundaries then around that? And we go, well, once you know what your rights are and what is really, really important to you, well, then you then can establish those boundaries and communicate that to your partner. And then if they keep coming back to you and butting up against that boundary all the time, well, then that is when you're going, okay, this is actually unhealthy because I've communicated this is what I'm after or this is what I'm feeling uncomfortable about, but they keep pressing that button. That is a very big sign that it's not, you're not living in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, so it really is up to us to teach people how to treat us. So when we stay silent, we'll be thinking, God, I hate that. I hate that they just spoke to me like that. But if we don't communicate that, then not always is it purposeful, but if we don't say anything, we don't give them the chance to be aware of that's how that made us feel, then of course it's going to keep happening again if we don't speak up. But as Joey said, dead right, if it keeps happening, if you let them know and it keeps happening, then you need to really start thinking about, hang on a minute, is this person somebody I want in my life that clearly don't respect my rights, my wants, my needs, and is this someone who I should be, having in my life to this capacity?
And once upon a time, go back 50 years, there was a real difference in the attitudes towards women and gender roles.
100%.
50 years ago, women were taught, was it women and children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
That was, can you imagine living in a world like that today? High five to all the...
Not today.
All the feminists and Germaine Greer that actually broke ground to make the world a better place for women. I can't imagine, but that's actually not okay. And interestingly, Joey, you brought up before about your rights. And one of the things that I know you both talk about is actually abuse. So if someone is physical towards you, it's a violation of your human rights. It's actually not okay to hit another person.
Absolutely. And that's something that we probably don't educate our children enough on is, and then if we're not educated about that as children, how do we carry that through to our adult life? Yeah. And so that is, and it's surprising majority of the women that come to our programs and we talk about human rights, for many of them, it's the first time they've ever heard of it. But then it's a great starting place for them to put their boundaries, create their boundaries, and then they grow from there. And we say this is a working document because what's important to you today may be very different to what it's important to you in 5 years' time. So it's something that you need to revisit and work out, actually 5 years ago, this is how I felt about that, right? But now, I'm okay with that because I'm really confident in that area, but I'm going to shift my boundaries now a little bit because this is the area I need more support around.
And when you were talking earlier about, old ways gone by, women should be seen and not heard, that's just shutting down all of what Joey's just said, making us think we didn't have any rights.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? I remember my granny, God love her, before she died, she'd talk about her dear sister that she was very close to. And she would talk about her husband, Robbie, who apparently used to drink a lot. And she'd be like, that bugger, what he does to my sister. And he was abusive to her sister. But I go, nothing happened. Nothing changed. Nobody did anything. It was just something that she had to put up with. And they'd be like, he's a bugger. But actually, that's not okay.
No, it didn't have a name back then. It was just accepted. Society accepted it.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like it, but there was nothing anyone could do about it because it actually wasn't named at that point.
Yeah. Oh, and you hear the stories about police that wouldn't get it. It's not our problem. What goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. So many women and children suffered terribly because nobody would help.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, there was nowhere to go. I remember back then, you know, when I was a teenager, there was no refuges in Newcastle. And so even if Mum wanted to go somewhere, there was nowhere for her to go. I think there was one in Sydney at that time in the 70s, but there was nowhere up here. And like you say, the police were called if you were lucky. And if they did, they didn't do anything because it was a man's world. It was a man's house, his domain. Even though, you know, my mum worked her whole life, it just was not seen as equally, you know, as what my stepfather, who was the abusive person, did.
Yeah. So let's get a bit positive. From your experience, what are some of the foundational principles or skills that women can cultivate to create a healthy foundation for future relationships? Because you've mentioned the Shark Cage. So for people who aren't listening, Shark Cage is a program that we run at Got Your Back Sista, and other services do run it as well. And it's around educating women about relationships, because many women who've been, and women who come to Got Your Back Sista have generally been in an abusive relationship, and they want to be in a relationship with somebody in the future. They don't want to be alone forever. They want to be with somebody.
Absolutely.
But if they don't learn what they can do to empower themselves to make, you know, to do what they can to be in a healthy relationship, or if it's not, get out, then they're going to probably continue that pattern. So tell us, what are some of those skills and things that you teach women in the Shark Cage?
One is to have a voice. Like and that all comes down to acknowledging your self-worth and the human that you are, and all your good attributes and what makes you who you are, and actually embracing that. I think that is believing in yourself and taking time to acknowledge self-care and the importance that plays in your life as well, because that is what builds your confidence, and making yourself realize that you deserve to have a good life and you deserve to have time out to yourself and do the things that make you happy, because when you are filling, as we say, our cup up, that means that we can give to so many people around us, but we need to make sure that we're doing the right things to ourselves first.
What do you say to women, though, who've been terribly abused and their self-worth and their self-confidence, self-esteem is in the toilet? What do you do?
And when Joey was talking about that, I was thinking about these women come to these groups absolutely stripped of everything that they ever thought about themselves. They don't recognise themselves anymore. So it's about rebuilding themselves. And we do some exercises in there too. We often talk about faking it till you make it, you know, to get them to think of good qualities of themselves, you know, and because, you know, and society plays a role in this as well, you know, if you start saying good things about yourself, some people just think, oh yeah, look at you go, got your big head, you know, that sort of thing. And so women especially, after they've been in these relationships and have just told they're useless and worthless and no good for nothing for years, I often relate it to a chicken, you know, pecking at the back of your heel and just never letting up. So you don't have any space to work on yourself. And so when the relationship is over, we love it. We have seen the Shark Cage change women's lives, and they just come and they learn about a different thing each week, and each week it builds on itself. It's just rebuilding them from the ground up. To first, like Joey said, making them realise that, you know, you're in control of your life. You need to get back in the driver's seat, you know, and if they've come from a family of origin where that never happened, they've never been in the driver's seat. So how do you teach someone to learn to drive when they've never? It's so foreign to them, and it's scary, and it takes time. And after, you know, 6 or 8 weeks, it doesn't mean like they can just go out and do it. It takes practice over a long time,
and it's a life journey. It's constantly working on your self-care. We always say in our groups that we are our worst critic. You know, we're the ones that really put ourselves down first, but we need to turn that around and be our biggest cheerleader.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's when you're cheerleading yourself, well, then everybody around you feels that.
Yeah. And you talked about the importance of boundaries before to have a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. Yep.
So talk about that. What I know just from being at work, I've heard you talk about that many of the women that we see at Got Your Back Sista, they don't have boundaries. And that's something they really have to learn.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to put in place too when you've got no self-confidence. You go, how do I kickstart this? But it's about firstly, we say practicing your boundaries, putting them up around your safe people, and then the more that you work with putting them up in the safe environment, well, then it starts flowing across to every part of your life.
So give me an example of a boundary.
Okay, well, I have a right to feel safe. And then that means then that could even be as simple as people coming to your own personal space, that the moment they walk into that, you feel like they stand really close to you, you feel really uncomfortable, and your body sends off the little messages going, what is this person doing in my face? But it's about having the confidence, and as we say, fake it till you make it. Oh, excuse me, do you mind just standing a little bit away, or you moving yourself to protect yourself from that, that person.
Just to give them the message that you're in my space, whether it's verbal or, I just say, because it's about confidence, self-esteem and confidence go hand in hand, and so we're rebuilding that in most of the women that come to the group. And so just the simple, most women cannot say no, to anyone except their children often. But we teach them that it's really important that they start to say no to safe people in their life. And it's people, we talk about pushy fish. So often we've got what we call pushy fish in our life. So they're not necessarily perpetrators of domestic violence or people who are being abusive on purpose, but it's just people who want what they want from you, and they're just going to push a little bit further to try and get it. And we often use we do a little role play in the group about, your sister is always wanting you to babysit her kids, and this time you want to say no, and we get the women to role play that, and it's really uncomfortable for them, saying no, because those old thoughts of when we were a child, you can't say no to people because you want them to like you, and you don't want them to think you're an awful person because you're not going to give them what you want. It's about, they have to combat all those internal messages that they've lived with all those years, and realise that, well, actually it doesn't matter if that person doesn't like me. I can't babysit their kids again 6 weeks in a row, and I have the right to say no, and they need to find somebody else. But it can be really, really hard.
And it does take practice. But it does reflect that you actually believe in self-care and believe in yourself. And the moment you turn to the not allowing your boundaries or not setting your boundaries, what happens then is that you become selfless. And with that comes along a lot of, you start despising that person, or you have really...
resentment.
Yeah, resentment. That's the word, Rosie.
Every now and then I come up with a good one.
So you talk pushy fish. What other types of, I guess, men, or in the Shark Cage we're talking to women about men, what sort of other categories, I guess, or types of people do you talk about in Shark Cage? For them to identify that.
Well, we talk about shark-like behaviour. So the perpetrators, the people who are doing the power and control stuff, they're what we call shark-like behaviour. People who use those types of behaviours purposefully. And what the other thing we often have to get through to the women who come to the group is, because we're constantly, as women in domestic violence, we're constantly making excuses for their behaviour. And so we will go down the path of, he drinks too much, or he's got mental health issues. If he could just give up the drugs or the gambling, things would be a lot better, we'd be a lot happier. But we talk about that, whilst those things do impact domestic violence, they're not the cause, they're not the drivers, but they certainly make living in one of those relationships much, much harder and more unsafe for you. Because women are rescuers by nature, because we're kind. We want to help people. Like Joey said, we're people pleasers. And so we, often get, he'll tell his sad childhood story. And this is one thing I'm very passionate about. We hear all the women talk about, oh, he had a really rough childhood. Tell me this, tell me that. And, I just want to show him.
He's got a mental health issue.
Yeah. I can show him what love looks like. But what I say to that is, well, hang on a minute. Most of the women that we work with, including myself, did not have an ideal childhood. There was abuse in it. But I didn't grow up using power and control in my intimate relationships. And so it shows them that it's a choice. They can change if they choose to. But that road's often very hard, and some choose to go down it and some don't. But
and it takes work. And it's a journey for the rest of your life. You have to constantly be working on that.
But we do ask women to hope is a wonderful thing to hang on to in certain circumstances, but not in domestic violence. When a woman's living in DV and she's hopeful that he'll change, that hope keeps her unsafe.
Are there any other shark-like behaviours?
Yeah, well,
it can be verbal, like obviously yelling. That's not okay, because that means there's a whole lot of aggression sitting behind that yelling. Assertive behaviours is what we seek. But that's
so assertive, not aggressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk to me about the dolphins.
Dolphins are the people we want more of in our life. So we want to surround
Let's
ourselves
talk
with
about the dolphins.
That respect us.
Yeah, they care about our wants and needs. So if we put a boundary in place, you know, they're more likely to go, oh, I'm really sorry about that. I didn't realise that's how I made you feel and that wasn't my intention, you know. So, and they won't actually do that thing again. So, yeah.
And they make you feel good. You know, you enjoy spending time with them. You feel safe. You feel that you can have a conversation that they may not agree with, but you can still have that conversation and have that discussion of what their thoughts are and what your thoughts are, and they might be different, but that's okay.
And dolphins help you grow. They encourage you. They don't try and disempower you or isolate you from anybody. You know, even if you want to do something that, you know, they're not into, you want to go and learn a new skill. The dolphins are the people who go, oh, I have no idea why you would want to do that, but have fun. Good luck. Hope it all goes well.
Oh, that's my husband when I re-enrolled back in uni.
I was thinking that.
I've decided this year that I'm going back to university, and that's my husband. I don't get why you're doing that. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
Yeah.
I actually did say to him, do you want to come and sit in a lecture?
Oh, my
Because you can just see
goodness.
what it's all about. He's like, no way. But he is supportive, and that's wonderful. It's like he doesn't understand it. He's like, I don't get why you would want to do that. But, you know, but he is supportive of that.
Yeah.
I think Brene Brown says you want to surround yourself with people that want to keep your flame burning. The ones that try to put it out are not the ones for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really little thing to keep in the back of your mind when people are trying to put you down. You're going, yeah, is this someone that I really need to surround myself with?
Yeah. And that's important. I've actually got here. How important is it for women to build a support network?
It can be a game changer.
Absolutely can be.
And we notice that in our groups. The women come along and they're very, very insecure at the very first session. They're scared, they're anxious. Sometimes they don't even make it through the door. But once they turn up and they've been part of the program for about 2 weeks, they realise that there's other people in that group that they really can connect with, because not that they've walked the same journey, but they have been exposed to domestic violence. And
that's part of the shame. Like actually attending some of these programs, it can really bring up that shame, which is not theirs to bear, but we feel it, you know, because we've experienced it. So it does sort of seem, it's like a little something else in your backpack that just goes everywhere with you until you learn how to let it go. And that, you know what, I have felt shame, but it wasn't my shame to bear. So yeah, and we encourage the women they can participate as much or as little as they like. If they don't want to say anything, then just sit there and observe. So there's no pressure on anybody. And
they build these little friendships up, and that might end at the end of the program. Some might continue, but it just means that they realise that they've got the ability to make friends again and to have a little community connection to other people, and
that they are worthy of love and connection.
Yeah. And then by them going out to do other groups outside of Got Your Back Sista, or, you know, and that could be, you know, joining the gym or but they have got the skills and they are worthy of other friendships, and that makes them grow.
Yeah. Do you have an example of a success story of somebody who's gone, who's been previously in a toxic, abusive relationship, but has gone on to then have a future relationship that's been positive and thriving?
Yeah, we have. And they always do, you know, note back to the shark cage, you know, how they were able to do that, you know, and what to look for. And usually it is by putting themselves first, learning that I need to care about my needs first, you know, be self-focused rather than other-focused. And if they're with the right person, they will get that, and they will just walk alongside them in that journey. But, you know, quite often we do see women go into another relationship because, as you said in the beginning, Mel, we're born for connection. We're meant to partner up and be with other people for that human connection. And so, you know, a lot of women, especially when we first meet them, you know, we sort of talk about having a little time for you and not getting in another relationship for a while. And most people go, oh, never again. Am I getting, you know, and we would like 5 cents every time we hear that. But because we're born for connection, we will. And we say, look, that's really lovely, and I would love you to just stay single while you work on yourself and do some things. And then, of course, when you do go into a relationship, you've got all these lovely skills that you've just learnt and strategies, and know what to look out for, so that if you do, and often they do find themselves in another abusive relationship, and how that happens is because we compare what we've just left to the new person, and their behaviours would be totally different. You know, if you go out with somebody who's physically abusive, and then the next time you go out with somebody, there's no physical, but there's just, you know, emotional and verbal, the woman often finds herself going, oh, well, at least he doesn't hit me. you know, but it doesn't make it okay. So what Shark Cage teaches them is that when they are ready to move on, they can see these red flags and they actually nip them in the bud this time rather than let them go. And then before they know it, they're back there again.
So what's a red flag? Let's talk about the types of red flags, specifics.
One of them would be is if they're love bombing. You know, and that happens a lot when they're getting lots of text messages and that person's wanting to spend a lot of time with them, and the woman usually thinks that's amazing, like, oh my gosh, I've finally got somebody that really likes me and wants to spend time with me. And for us, we go, just be really careful of that, because that charming side is never turns out to be charming.
And when we do the list on the board, you know, the women come up with all the different things like love bombing, jealousy, you know, all the different forms of abuse, that sort of thing. But, you know, we often go back and put charming at the very top and ask the women, you know, because they're like looking at us like we're weirdos. Why would that be a red flag? And the reason being is because of this manipulation, this power and control, this choice. So, and, you know, we talk about how every woman deserves charming. We absolutely do. And we want you to have charming. But you need to keep your wits about you while you're going through those with those charming people to see whether or not they stay charming or not, you know, over time. And if they do, then obviously they are the real deal. But often they're what we call sharks disguised as dolphins. So the shark behaviours are there, but we're just wearing a certain hat to get you in, and then once we've got you, it's much harder for you to get out. So that's why nipping those red flags in the bud are really important to start with. So if he's disrespectful, you know, if you're at a restaurant and he's rude to a waitress, you know, don't let that stuff go. Talk about that. Go, gee, that was really rude.
If he's wanting to know where you are.
And especially if they're putting their previous partners down all the time, talking really badly about them. You go, well, that's not part of our relationship now, but that is another red flag for me, is when they're constantly putting other people down. Yeah,
because when we're talking about, you know, helping women to understand their rights in a relationship, we also talk to them about responsibility, that everyone's got the same rights, but with that comes responsibility. So if we've got the right to feel safe and be treated with respect, we have to make sure that we do that to other people. So, and we talk about, you know, when we've got other family members or we might be in the workforce and there's people who don't treat us with respect, you know, that doesn't give us the right to not treat them with respect back, you know, and to practice that stuff that we preach and that we want for ourselves.
So some other red flags I'm just thinking of when I've spoken at schools, which has been a while now, it has been your new partner wanting to know the passwords to your social media, or wanting access to your emails, or borrowing money, wanting to track where you are and trying to sell that to you, like, oh no, it's, you know, we're just
because I love you.
Yeah, I love you, and I just want to make sure you're okay. So I'm just, you know, let's put on some software on your phone to track where, so I can see where you are, so I can make sure you're okay. All of those are red flags.
Absolutely,
that's right. And they'll often do it and say, well, you can have it on mine as well, but you know, it's for a very different reason. And so she falls into the fact that, oh, he must really love me. It is because he cares about me. No one's ever cared about me so much like this before in these ways. So it's easy to be tricked into that. And yeah, passwords is something we do cover in Shark Cage, you know, that actually when they're asking for your passwords, that's not a sign of a healthy relationship, you know, because if they trust you, then they wouldn't need that. You know,
and the amount of people we have that previous partners have looked through their text messages, their emails, and that is a big red flag.
Absolutely.
Because it means they're insecure.
Wanting to go through and delete females or males from your account.
Yep,
that's right.
From your social media because they're feeling insecure.
Yeah, or questioning about why did you text that person. That is definitely a red flag.
Yeah. Oh, well. Back on the positive, you know, as a wrap up, what would you like women to take away today from the positive, what they can do and what for them to look for in a positive way for men so that they can build that healthy relationship?
Well, I think one big thing to take away is that self-care is okay. And for you to be the best version of yourself, it's essential that you put that into your life, and it's not selfish.
So to be the best version of yourself so that when you go into a relationship,
you're confident, you've got your boundaries, you know who you are. Where a lot of people go, well, if I do that for myself, people are going to think I'm selfish. And it's not, you know. So I think self-care and understanding who you are as a human is really important going into any relationship.
And I think too, I mean, obviously I agree with all of that, but also just to know that there is a lot of help out there. And I can't tell you the amount of women we've worked with that once we've engaged with them and tell them about everything we can do to support and help them, they're just blown away because they did not know there was so much help out there available. And it just comes from that being brave enough to come and have that first conversation. You know?
And there are wonderful men out there.
There are.
You know, I feel blessed every day. I was in a not so great relationship years ago, and I feel blessed that I've found a wonderful man, and you know, and it's wonderful to go into a healthy relationship and for that to work out. But and I agree, it's like self-care, communication, but it's also understanding what you will and won't accept. And so, you know, if your partner's exhibiting things that you go, actually, I'm not okay with that, being able to communicate that, and if that's not resolved, okay, well then you need to look very hard at, you know, what steps you're going to take to address that or leave. But also celebrating the good stuff.
Yes.
Having fun with your new partner.
Absolutely. That's fun is a huge part of a healthy relationship. Enjoying one another's company, wanting to be together, but not that much that you're smothering the other person, because that's when it goes down that slippery slope. But looking forward to coming home and telling that person about your day and having them actually be interested and wanting to know.
Rosie, I think that's a really good point that you just mentioned, was that you both still have to have your individual lives, and then you cross over your two circles and you cross over, and part of that is what you enjoy doing together. But being your own individual self is really healthy.
Absolutely. Yay. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and having a chat about that, about relationships and I guess what you've seen, because you work with women who have been in not so great or abusive relationships, and going, okay, well, but really, you know, what can we do to ensure that we can identify potentially not abusive relationships or toxic relationships, but then who do we need to be when we show up in relationships as well?
Yeah. Look, I think another thing we did actually miss talking about was love. What is love? And we do cover that in the Shark Cage and in our individual sessions, because, you know, we've grown up with this version of what love, you know, and the TVs and the movies and the songs give us all these messages about what love is. But, you know, when we pull that apart and what's actually going on in the relationship and challenge the women with, well, when he does that to you, tell me about how that makes you feel loved.
Yeah.
You know, and so getting them to really look at, well, what is a love behaviour and what's not.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, if people want to learn more about, I'll say, Got Your Back Sista, you can go to the Got Your Back Sista website, gotyourbacksista.com. If you want to learn more about the Shark Cage, you can go to our website, or there actually is a website about the Shark Cage. And enjoy, when you found that right person, enjoy being with that person and be the best version of yourself and show up as that person.
I also just wanted to say that, you know, because we talk about wild for connection, but we also need to remind women that it is okay if they never want to repartner again. That's their choice. That's their right. Because some women actually don't feel safe enough and they find it hard to just trust. But society gives us this message that we can't be on alone. What's wrong with this if we don't have a partner? And we need to really look at that and address that and go, you know what? I'm okay by myself. I don't need a man in my life to make me complete, or a partner. I can be happy just being me.
Well, thank you so much, girls. Thanks, Joey and Rosie.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mel.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great day. Thank you, sisters.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Hey Soul Sista with Mel Histon. What would help you on your crazy life journey? Email Melissa at thesistercode.com.